Okay, I'm all right then. I'll just sort of klutzy. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you all for coming. Robert, I'm glad to read with you again. I'm going to start by reading this. My book, The Greenhouse, is now a year old, which sort of blows my mind. So now I get to read from other things, which is always exciting. I sort of feel like that first year, you kind of are promoting the book, and now I'm free again, as much as I love the book still, which is sort of surprising, but yeah, what am I saying? Anyway, you get tired of your own work, and then you fall in love with it again, and then, So I'm going to read a poem from my first book, Tulips, Water, Ash, and it's a Marin poem, or at least it takes place in Marin. View from the headlands. The longer I know it, my husband says, this place, the worse I know it is, the ruined, the once. Paradise once, we think, and still the hills, the bridge, some perfect gleaming headway, hills falling down into October, brown, browner, sparks of the paper eucalyptus. How do you even talk about that? One person's glimmering pasts, someone else's ruined moment, 5 generations or 3 at the intersection of Esperanza and home. We tracked the last ridge, mustard pollen clinging to our shoes. The night sure to devolve into real estate gossip, the way farmland equals strip mall, given enough rope. The moon hung or was tethered low in its cradle. Down below, headlights, sirens, women with their silly little dogs. And behind the first hill, our neighborhood, gentrifying, corroding, strung out along the streetcar, the sweet, skinny Armenian grocery clerk, hauling in the cantaloupes as the lights go on in the apartment upstairs. How much more can I tell you, you who have your own broken, ultimate home? And the sure, he said, I am, this untenable near island eroding at the edges. I'm going to read a few poems from The Greenhouse. And I should say a little bit about this. My son was born in 2006, and from about 2006 to 2009, I pretty much didn't sleep. So that does really strange things to your brain. And after writing these very concise, tight, compressed poems, I didn't write for a while for obvious reasons. And then I started writing again, and suddenly the work was anything but concise and tight. I felt like my brain had kind of been removed and kind of like spaghetti in a colander, it was all mixed up and then put back in there. So that's what this is. Like that. The first time, I leaned over and swept the tip of my smallest fingernail down into the whorl of your ear, bigger than your elbow, and you yelped in violation. Forgive me. It is no longer my ear, little boat, little shell I carved. Flushing pink even now at the embarrassment, the satisfaction, sliver moon of yellow wax, tiny victory. Lovers say, I did not know where my body ended and yours began. I did not know. Even yesterday when you laughed, reared back, your head quick snap against my upper lip, both of us laughing, and then me still laughing, eye sting, drop of blood at the crown of your head, panic. Oh, mine. This morning, holding, rough, soft, drawing my tongue up under my lip, compelling, like that. And entirely unlike, of course we must say, feel we must say. 6 months until you crawled, the only calm lay in your being tied to me, head up, bumping my ribs, head up, eyes open, that same position on my body that you took inside it, the acupuncture, the headstands, what I wouldn't do in those last weeks to turn you toward the earth. And everything slipping permeable, you, me, the least of it, day, night, inside, outside, body, body, what I wouldn't do. I could open the door. Wait, wavering Jewish atheist that I am, I made you. Let's see. Flowers, doggies, the moon. It's only beginning to recede, that time, that milk dream of a year, the long hours in the rocker, the occasional calculating to assuage my restlessness, its portion. That is, the first of his, the last of my 30s, 1 year. 1%, too, worth so much more, I think, once more. And so once more, keep rocking, switch sides, watch the last streetcars lumbering home through the half-open blinds, switch sides, brief flicker at the corner of his mouth, a sigh, rocking. And where else would I rather be? That's not to call up the rhetoric of choice, privilege, the drill of tussling generations, what we fought for, what we take for granted and embrace. It's just so difficult to step back into that sea, soft swirl without counting, only to rise days later in a different spot on the waves. What did you do today? Check the mommy memoirs. Nurse, bathe, dress, change, sleep, fail to sleep, feel about it, all the ways one is supposed or not supposed to feel. In the beginning, though, we were free even of the balm of naming. Flowers, doggies, the moon, on its pages or in the sky. Only circles within circles, and doing or even feeling so much beside the point, the warm thrum of the tide. Once I tried sitting, this when my life was one quietly perfectible room, discipline, books, and tea, a long view of hills and the signal tower, driving to the Zendo in morning frost, and folding my legs on a square white mat. How impossible it was, first sending each thought out on its little line, boat, boat, boat. Then the fidgeting, the sarcasm, sudden aches, then finally reduced to counting back from 100, and still the harbor with its jostling and its tethers. 38, 38, 38, 37. Isn't this one idea of heaven, beyond giving or change or love, and down into this deep, bright sphere of what is, tomorrow and yesterday lost in eddy of here? The only count, the heartbeat rhythm of his mouth, small round callus on the upper lip, and us together back and forth in the chair. How can you have memory without language, my friend asks, one of those many slow mornings, and even then, thoughts flow back into the sea, a place sans both 10 o'clock and tomorrow, present, present, present. Our 2 boys nursing, again sometime mid-afternoon, and a wave laps at the rug, each of us bobbing cross-legged and curled over, bowless holes for our swaddled sons. Is this why we remember nothing of the time, its only position before? Memory without language, memory of face, smell, the bath, the big dog, the tree, but mostly of this, no name, no category, milk, the present nudging at the shore. He is asleep and I am awake. My husband and I joke, what's a good dream for a baby? The breast. Bad dream? No breast. But seriously, folks, an eternity of no breast. 38, 38, 38, 37. And sometimes it is all I can do, calling up the mask of patience again. Nurse, bathe, dress, change, sleep, feel about it. Walking, rocking, singing one song when all the rest have fled from memory. Oatmeal, oatmeal, it's a meal made of oats, made of oats, made of oats. Oatmeal, oatmeal. Repeat until the space between the blinds goes violet, white. Even out there, the lines get tangled, especially out there, each hull throwing out a line to the next, a web, a push back to not here, not now, back on the shore of the phone call, the gas bill, the poem and how it should end, the need to show up tethered to the tug on the other end. And it's so easy to see myself hopping from one to the next, to link them like metaphor until all the clocks line up on either side and the kitchen and the desk are sparkling, empty, arrayed. Not now, not now, not now. Scows pulling out, laden. Rock, switch sides, watch for the slow dip of eyelid, the open hand. He's beginning to fight it, swimming up for one more round. Eye, eyebrow, nose, mouth, teeth, of saying, And the moon in the waves is a moon in the book we read yesterday in the big chair by the window, and the eye under its brow is round like the moon. The lines multiply, shimmer in the light of the day, of this morning and what we're doing tomorrow, and now we're again down in it, his eye a crescent slipping into line, and on the horizon the dozen tiny holes receding, going to silhouette as we're pulled together back into the mute night sea. So the epigraph to this next poem is from a Scientific American article about, well, let's see what it's about. It's been a lot of back and forth on Facebook about this article lately. I don't know, it seems to have resurfaced. And the title of the poem, Chimera, is a mythological creature that has, I think it's a lion's head and a snake for a tail and a goat's body or something. It's all kind of very strange. Right. Chimera. Microchimerism is the persistent presence of a few genetically distinct cells in an organism. Cells containing the male Y chromosome were found circulating in the blood of women after pregnancy. I know. I want them out. I want to be myself again. My old untethered, young untied, I lie. I want nothing more, or want no more the point. Dendritic entwine, signed on for the duration, bright tangle, snaking line of fire. The crucible does not ask for want, is tied in, shot through, fired. I talked about not sleeping, and ironically, I mean, that was sort of just the defining factor of the early years of my son's life, and yet I didn't write about it directly for a long time. And when the book was about to go, not just to go to press, but we were finalizing the text of the book, and I said I need to write one more poem, and this was it, called "And I Go Down Into It, the Hall Again, Streetlights, Blinds, all the same, all the dark, down into it and do what must be done with my body, with the patience that I do not have. Fellow sufferer, fellow sleeper, not sleeper, seeker, night boat, little sail, in the slow air, in the rounded dark, inside the broken night, rudderless, elliptical, in the stitched together minute, 365 times night, times 8, new, times 4, times 2, times 8 again, despair, iron, times 2, times 1, times occasional, times rarity, fever, monsters, light, equals now, equals again, once. So there are two poems in this book called Anchor, which, strange, I didn't really plan, but they both seem to need that title, and it took me a while to see how they spoke to each other. So I'm going to read one now and one in a few minutes. Anchor. I believed I could make it up, that will was power, not in that greasy philosophy boy way, but in some ancient sense of generosity of making a poem or a meal or perhaps a practice. I like that, just flexing the fingers. Why do I keep returning to that room, the scarred stone Buddha above the radiator, desk and chair, mirror of tarnished guilt, and the rules did not apply? It helped that they were such small rules, art and finance and the hum of the freeway at the bottom of the hill. One window that opened. One thing can be made or kept for a while. If it wasn't something, it would be something else, a doubling of cells. Lucky, and eventually bad luck too. Category body, category money, middle-class artist, global collapse, blow to the head, the tired usual, the high wire, and the blessed net. And lucky even out of that, wolf like a wind at the door. About that doubling, we made a person anchor to the earth. Lucky boy. So like I said, you do the one-step tra-la, see how it's done, and look up to find you are being pulled by something bigger, the hand of some giant clock. Have in fact lashed yourself to it with great joy. And it split me open, made me pure triage. Will such a flimsy ticket. So sometimes you want to share art with your children, and that can have some amazing and also unintended consequences. Charge. When the giant sacrifices himself for the boy, and on the screen the men marching toward him, all the pieces falling from his metal body, steaming in the snow. When the giant sacrifices himself for the boy at my side is lifted for a moment, filled with air, the intake, the stop gasp held aloft, no sound, the shock at the top of the arc, the drop. And only then, on the way down, opens into sob, hard water wrung from a knot, all the pieces falling. Small hot forehead pressed to my chest, animal exposed in the storm, knows himself then, knows himself to want more. This is the last poem in the book. I'm going to read this, and then I'll read a few new ones that I've never read in public before. So this is also titled Anchor. And if I put down my book to read him a book, and if I put down that book to check the mail, and if I put down the mail to get up and brush my hair and make pancakes because it is Saturday and I have promised pancakes, and if, in measuring the flour, I hold it up to the light to check the level because I want to be more accurate, and if all this happens entirely in my head because I am still in actuality trying to get myself out of bed, and oh, I am so sick of the self, hauling it around everywhere, dragging it along even as my brain chases the tail of another dangling modifier in a sentence without a subject, that is, without an anchor, even as everything here is an anchor, the shell of the brush, the scarred griddle, my son's feet pushing into the warm space behind my knees, my husband's arm behind my head, tangled ballast nudging a raft out into the day. I used to worry I'd float straight up off the earth, snap my tether, fear and relief. I was 20, it was all meaningful weather, flame and snow. Now the self is a turtle on a rope, prehistoric pull toy, heavy as a station wagon, with compartments for water and sunglasses. Sometimes I forget myself and leave it in the garage. Sometimes I ride it around so it doesn't get lonely. Sometimes it drifts off down a tributary and we go sailing on, 3 of us in our big bed. It thinks it's steering, but it's not. All right. These are some new poems. I'll read them out in my class, I think so. That I've written since the book, and you were the first to hear them, so be gentle. Cupcakes. Happy families are all alike. I wrote it on cupcakes with a sable hair brush, electric blue on cream cheese frosting. In the dream, I was a conceptual artist. I think I meant to write the entire book, the entire year. I shall still be as unable to understand with my reason why I pray. It was a great relief to have a project, and I shall still go on praying. Trying to decide which translation of Anna Karenina to use. Decide to stick with the Constance Garnett because, that's what happened in the dream. All right. That was actually one of those poems where I had a dream and it became a poem, and, they say not to do that, but yeah, it was just like, okay, thank you. All right. And I found myself writing a lot lately about perfectionism and how insidious it is and how annoying it is, and at least all the manifestations, especially for women. So those little plastic number puzzles given out at grade school parties, slide this tile over here, and eventually you'd have made a clearing, a way to move through the world. Each ridged edge hooked under the next, lagged at the nudge, one step closer to yes. Joy of click, click, getting there, getting it downright. Downright, perfect heart eye, downright, cartwheel on the lawn, round off, round up, emerald sheen, knife blade crease, designer jeans, line and spoke, black and white, scrape of chalk in long straight lines, slide right, down right, never fall, Keep one space open so you can move at all. Rage to order. 1. Insert here, dark joke about sharks, keep swimming or they die. Cruising around the apartment, something always in her hand, movement from here to there, returning, every wayward thing needing her to find its home. Idle, wedge edge of panic, polishing itself. She is easy to dismiss, is difficult, elegant, too demanding, too much. In the house of self, she is the sleeper, cell, rogue. Sharp whir, levitating, mission, eradication, all the edges singing, all the clean, all the blade, only the everything there, and not the not. 2. Oh, darling, see this bed I have made you, so white. 3. What she was under that tree, stack of books at hand, was lonely, soul not tragic, still, only, clear gone, tumbling into pages. 4. Everything needed her. 5. And meanwhile, back to the cells, doing their job perhaps a bit too well. Look at them shine, oh. If foreign, eradicate. If possibly foreign, no chances. If only. Oh, to be perfect, clear, shot through, all the silence and the piercing light. 6. Because she read Plato at a tender age. Because it feels like fixing. Because if she does what they expect, they will leave her alone. Because the right slant of light. Because something to push against. Because annihilation. Some pure beauty, some glacier singing. 7. Literally, no. Metaphorically, no. Literally. 8. If in doubt, eradicate. If skin, if swell, if possible, invader, encompass, wall off, flood, to inflame, repeat. Better safe. Then what? Then what? Some slip past the bracket gates, then what? All right, let's see. Time to read 2 more? 2 short ones, or am I good for 1? 2? Okay. 2 short. Short to medium. 1 short, 1 medium. To do. The more, the better, the easier to fold into the list, siren of every, to make it through, triumph of the empty sink, burnish, pay date, pay out of holding it together, binder, bound. Don't open that book. A book is a construct. A poem is an oyster knife. No, a letter opener. No, a distraction we cannot afford. What did you think would happen? Don't drop that fork. I need it to stick in the toaster. Don't touch my hair. No time to push it out of my eyes. Look up from the screen. Now look at infinity. The poem is a caviar spoon, a speculum, a snorkel, sardine tin with the key built in. My phone is buzzing. A cell, a call, a check to deposit. Text, text, text. Don't. Hand me that knife. All right. I think I'm going to end there.
Thank you, Lisa. That was great. That was a good place to end, but I feel kind of sad we missed the last poem.
Leave them wanting more? I don't know.
Yes, that's right.
It's a whole different kind of vibe, I felt like.
No, that was good. That was a great ending. So our next reader is Robert Thomas, and there's huge news to report about him, which is that the book he's going to read from tonight, or at least I'm not sure what he's going to read from. Maybe he'll read from other books too. But his newest book just won the 2015 Penn Center USA Award for fiction. I think that it actually is a book of poetry. So I think he sort of slid in there in the fiction section. But so we'd like to congratulate you, Robert. Okay, so Robert Thomas's latest book, Bridge, is a novella published by Boa Editions. His first book, Door to Door, was selected by Yusuf Komunyakaa as winner of the Poets Out Loud Prize and published by Fordham University Press. And his second book, Dragging the Lake, was published by Carnegie Mellon University Press. He has received a poetry fellowship from the NEA and won a Pushcart Prize. He lives with his wife in Oakland, And he last read at Falkirk Cultural Center in 2004. And so welcome, Robert Thomas, please.
Just watch your step is a little disturbing. It's in big, bold letters up here. Thank you, Marin Poetry Center. Thank you so much, Francesca, for asking me to read here. I think Francesca and I actually met in person the first time at this great reading that was a tribute to Jack Gilbert in Berkeley a couple of years ago. And we just happened to sit next to one another and kind of looked at one another, and I was like, I know you from Facebook. So see, there's a use to Facebook. Lisa and I have done a number of readings over the past year, and it's just always been wonderful. I love hearing her work, and I think she's doing really important work that's kind of exploring an aspect of life and consciousness that nobody else is really capturing. She's like working in that area, and it's great. I am going to read from Bridge. I'm going to read 4 short sections from it, a couple from the beginning and a couple from the middle. Don't want to give away any spoilers. I did actually submit it to BOA Press as I believe I called it a novella in prose poems, and I sent it to them during their submission period for poetry, not for fiction, and then we kind of mutually decided to publish it as fiction. But because this is Marin Poetry Center, I'm going to read, there is a kind of spectrum in the book. Some of the sections are more towards the poetry edge, the lyrical edge, and some of them are more towards the narrative. I'm going to go a little in the poetry section, in the poetry direction. The book is about a young woman, Alice. She's around 30 years old. She lives in San Francisco, works as a word processor at a law firm. She's going through a hard period in her life. She's got a sort of tormented romantic relationship with a coworker, David, and also a difficult relationship with her supervisor, Fran. She is verging on being suicidal a lot of the time, and occasionally homicidal when things really get bad with David or with Fran. But she's bought a gun.
This is fiction, right?
This is fiction. So I'm going to start with this section towards the beginning. It's all in her voice. Catchy tunes. It's not just this. Every written word is a suicide note, and a love letter too. There may be no one to talk to who would get it, but if you write it down, maybe someone will get it after you've left the room, or in 500 years, or maybe someone from Sirius, the dog star, will get it. The composer Karl-Heinz Stockhausen claimed he was born on Sirius. This was the genius who said the crashing of planes into the World Trade Center was the greatest concert ever held because it was performed with utter commitment, although he later conceded the audience had not been given the option to not attend, and that somewhat diminished its perfection. I heard Stockhausen interviewed at Davies Symphony Hall before the orchestra played one of his works that sounded to me like the voices of the parents in A Charlie Brown Christmas if they'd been arguing about real estate. Nothing like last Sunday at the opera when Rodolfo sang O Suave Fanciulla, O lovely girl to Mimi, and I couldn't bear it. Not that no one would ever sing that to me, despite my undeniable loveliness, but that it would be sung over and over to that Hungarian ham who had as much soul as a stuffed cabbage. And I mean ham in terms of her acting, not her size. She was quite svelte for a soprano. I wondered if David might even say something like it to his wife when she got home all lithe and limber after her yoga class. And I took the bus home from the matinee and sat on my sofa and began these notes, since the alternative was to kill someone. Most likely, but by no means necessarily myself. As I said, I was not impressed by Karl Heinz. His daughter Christelle was a flautist in the orchestra, and she joined him for the interview and said her father would take her and her brother out on the lawn of their summer house outside Cologne. This was years before he was on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. And he would teach them to read each constellation as notes on a stave and to sing the words of their favorite nursery rhymes to the star's melody. The dog ran away in the snow, and go get the sleigh in the cellar. It was a game, but it was hard, work and play at once. Their father explained to them, God does not write catchy tunes. You could tell she meant it to be a charming story, but the audience sat in silence. Suffer the little children. And this section comes not too far after that, and you'll see it pairs with that a little bit. This is called Ripe. What I want to record here is a sort of history. Like the ballad of Frankie and Johnny. I can never remember which is which because they're both boys' names. With my name, Alice, there's no confusion. Would it be the same if Frankie were a drummer, his wingtips tapping the pedal of his hi-hat, and Johnny a piano player? It all falls into place if Johnny is a piano player and Frankie a dancer. I wanted to be a dancer once, at least I wanted to take lessons. My mother wanted me to take violin. She wanted to rule out right from the start any chance of my playing a role in any ballad. And I guess you can't blame her for trying to shield me from a pleasure so far beyond her imagination that it looked like pain to her. When I was old enough to move to the city, I went without lunches so I could get ballet tickets. And every ballerina's kick, every grand battement was the Rudy Toot Toot of Frankie's 44. It might be aimed at my mother or at a Macy's clerk who snubbed me, but it was aimed. Last Fandango in Frisco. Most people never go against the grain. If you cut wood against the grain, it splinters. But if you cut meat against the grain, it keeps it tender. They say you reap what you sow, but the truth is, most of the time, some people are the sowers and others are the reapers. I just want to be a reaper for once. What's hard to believe is that I bought the gun before I even met David. It was 6 months before he got the job at my office and before I stopped seeing Dr. Frost, when she was still encouraging me to make my dreams real. She meant to go to Paris instead of watching a PBS special about the Louvre. Or maybe she meant just to treat myself to a steak dinner in North Beach. Dr. Frost failed to anticipate that I would venture into a strange neighborhood to repair the heel on my shoe, be forgotten while you wait, and told to come back another day, and then notice a gun shop, something I'd never seen in San Francisco, across the street, and remember Dr. Frost's advice on dreams with such uncanny clarity that I thought she was shouting to make sure I'd hear her over the delivery trucks on Mission Street. I'd been doing good work with Dr. Frost, not to be confused with Jesus-style good works. I'd been making progress faster than she would have dreamed possible if she ever dreamed of me. I was ready to be the change. I was ripe. I didn't act rashly, though. I thought it over. I'd learned that much. When I returned the next week, I was thankful the man behind the gun shop counter looked like a movie gangster, his black tie and black dress shirt. The humor of it relaxed me. Still, he knew he had something on me. Anyone who walks into a gun shop is a convert. They approach the counter as if walking up a church aisle to accept Jesus as their personal savior, knowing they'll be a different person when they walk out the door. Righteous. Even the word sounds like a gun's blaze. I was afraid I'd be rejected as unworthy, as if it were a loan application. But what preacher has refused to lay his beefy hand on any sinner's brow? I might be the first, though. And isn't that the definition of hell, to be the only person there? The one person at the orgy reading a book? One she doesn't even like. Atlas shrugged. I had no reason to doubt, though. The black shirt smiled at me and sold me the Ladysmith, the snub Smith & Wesson I'd chosen long before I went in. To them belongs the kingdom of heaven. To me. I'm going to skip ahead towards the middle of the book. This is called Of My Peers, as in jury of my peers, and you'll see why. It has 12 jurors and 2 alternates. Juror number 1. Conceived in a Murphy bed a block from the boardwalk. The silence in the room covered up by the screams from the rotor. The simple, elegant ride that went nowhere, an enormous barrel that spun so centrifugal force pinned the riders, and they faced one another across an abyss when the floor dropped away. Juror number 2. Never traveled outside the continental United States. No, Your Honor? Never eaten even one of the 7 moles of Oaxaca on the Zocalo. Never seen the stick figure petroglyphs within walking distance of the parking lots on the Kona coast. Never seen an iguana or an albatross on the Galapagos Islands. Never drunk a Manhattan in the Shanghai speakeasy. I hear they call it a Rio there. Juror number 3. Sang alto in the choir of Calvary Episcopal Church. Now my tongue, the mystery telling. Had to stop after developing vertigo, the interweaving harmony swaying like an Inca rope bridge over the Urubamba River, the wind playing a terrifying chromatic accompaniment. Juror number 4. Inarticulate as rain falling on benches overrun with morning glory. Makes no distinction between vine and stone, between the goldfish and the lily pond, between the living and the dead, and none of them expressing an opinion either. Juror number 5. Confused by sex, its untranslatability. A Romance language speaker who found that everyone else spoke Natchez or Korean or one of those African languages with clicks. Pursued by men clicking in a recess of the mouth she didn't possess, men whose attempts at communication sounded like Tuvan throat singing when they became aroused and expected her to respond in kind. Juror number 6. Declared a danger to self and others. Concurred. Extensive voir dire, unable to elicit the name of anyone not a danger to self and others. Betrayed. A fish that always leapt toward a sun that looked glorious from beneath the surface of the water, an enormous cloud of red krill or bloody chum, then flopped on the deck of a rusted fishing boat, anonymous, gutted, frozen. Juror number 7. Cheated on by his wife with their CPA, with the balloon animal maker at their son's birthday party, the usher at the opera who led them to their seats with his slender flashlight, the Korean grocer who always had the freshest produce, the kid who scooped ice cream at Baskin-Robbins. Baskin-Robbins. The man with a shaven head and a clipboard who rang their doorbell soliciting for Greenpeace. The mayor of Daly City. The Dalai Lama. Juror number 8. Had a dozen orgasms in 24 hours while studying for her real estate license. It was the taboo, the need to think of nothing but real estate, trying not to think of a pink panther until walls, chairs, everything was pink. The duller the topic, the greater the excitement. Adverse possession, eminent domain, yield spread, closing costs, right of exclusion, right of enjoyment, right of survivorship, right of control. Juror number 9, hospitalized for depression, hospitalized for psychosis. Don't you dare peel it. Don't you dare sign it. You've written outside the lines. Don't you dare decant that wine. You've spilled it on your white shirt. Don't you dare clean it. Don't you dare take it off. Take it off. Don't you dare wear it. Wear it. Juror number 10. Learned an entire life strategy one morning examining a shell on Morro Bay at low tide. Its external deep blue whorls look like the ocean to predators above, while the pearly underside looks like the sky to predators below. Juror number 11. Alchemist, beekeeper, cut purse, dog breaker, eremite, fence, gold beater, herbalist, interpreter, jack, knacker, lens grinder, matador, numerologist, orderly, percussionist, quarryman, radiologist, sacristan, timekeeper, underwriter, vintner, wrangler, xenophobe, yeoman, zealot. Juror number 12. Autopsy performed by a pathologist inconclusive. No residue on hands, no powder, weighed, measured, photographed from every angle, scanned with ultraviolet light. Birthmark above left scapula. Chest open from neck to pubis, minimal bleeding. Heart examined in situ, no abnormalities. Brain examined in situ, no signs of violence or any trauma, not a hint, not a hieroglyph. Alternate number 1. Experienced joy on several occasions, though no record was kept. But why would it? Returned to Seattle one winter on Amtrak, awake all night through the deliriously nameless snow of the Cascades until an apple tree appeared in a field across from the station where the train stopped before dawn. Alternate number 2. Burned through 10,000 acres and still not contained, aided by darkness and wind. Burned through cedar and pine, ceremony and prayer. Burned through edge, burned through air, burned through who, what, when, why, where. And the seething sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. And I'm just going to read one more short section. Shot in the dark. I promised myself not to exaggerate. I don't want to overreact to what is, after all, a stressful but only rarely catastrophic event in the life of a typical 21st century employee. It's not as if I have cancer. It's more like when my doctor told me I have borderline high blood pressure and I need to cut back on Chinese food. He didn't know I never eat Chinese food. He was taking a shot in the dark. When people jump from the Golden Gate, they invariably face the city lights. But what are the statistics when they shoot themselves? What % do it in the dark? It's not as if you need light to put a muzzle in your maw. How many do it outdoors at night? Near the ocean, the sound would be muffled. It would almost be nonviolent. It would be black and white, blood the black ink of calligraphy brushed on the sand, bold strokes forming the Chinese character for home. The ink black, except for the red seal the calligrapher signs his name with. What happened is this. This morning, Fran put me on probation. She'd said there had been more complaints about my work, about the fact that I wasn't doing it. She asked if I had anything to say. I did not. Call me Jesus. Actually, Jesus had a lot to say. Call me the Holy Ghost. Tongues of flame. I would have spoken in tongues if I dared. Fran wouldn't have known what hit her. Talitha kaum, little girl, arise. Nothing is as beautiful as fire, because it contains all colors, because it dances with 7 veils, because it crosses the 7 gates to the underworld, because it drops a veil at each gate, because it is the way and the truth, period, because it asked for the head of the Baptist, because its secret name is Isis and it danced at the crucifixion. I sat in Fran's office counting the items of clothing I wore. 7, perfect. Enough to pay my way to the underworld. In college, a girl took off her clothes under the quince tree in the quad and walked to class. Everyone figured she was crazy. A campus cop led her away and came back later and folded her clothes. Fran gave me 3 months to change course as if I were an oil tanker or the QE2. She assured me this would be kept between the 2 of us. She knew I'd hate that more than any discipline she could think up with her clever brain. And I knew she must have consulted with David about me. Somehow, when I wasn't paying attention, they'd become friends. Now I recall them talking in the hall about their favorite dishes. That's what did it. My God, walnut pesto. Nevertheless, I did not slip off my blue shoes and point them at Fran's heart. I did not unbuckle my matching blue belt and hang it on the ficus in the hall. And I would wait until I got home to take off my blouse and skirt and burn them in the bear claw bathtub like an offering to Isis, fire to fire. I know that sounds crazy, but it would do no one any harm, would it? And there are very few options I have left that would do no one any harm. Thank you.